The 2000s weren't just a new decade for the NBA, they were a reset. Jordan was gone, the Bulls were broken, and the league wide open. What followed was a roller coaster of chaos and dominance, a three-peat in LA, a dynasty in San Antonio, and a war for identity in between. We got prime Iverson, young LeBron, the rise of Kobe, the fall of Shaq, and the blueprint for what the modern NBA would become. From streetball mixtape energy to international expansion, from defense-first grinders to score-at-will assassins. The 2000s gave us everything: heartbreak, heat checks, headlines, and heroes who defined a generation. So let's rewind, season by season, moment by moment. This is every NBA season of the 2000s explained. The year 2000 wasn't just the start of a new decade, it was the start of a new order. And the NBA needed a new alpha. Enter Shaquille O'Neal. Not skinny Orlando Shaq, not aging washed up Shaq. This was prime LA Shaq. In 2000 was the year he turned into a monster. He averaged 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, 3 blocks, and won MVP without debate. The Lakers won 67 games. Phil Jackson showed up with 6 rings, triangle offense in hand, and gave Kobe Bryant and Shaq the structure they never had. And for once, it actually worked. Well, kind of. Because as dominant as they looked on the court, behind the scenes, there was tension. Kobe wanted the ball, Shaq wanted the respect, Phil was just trying to keep the peace. But on the scoreboard, it didn't matter. The Lakers were terrorizing the league. Meanwhile, the East was absolute chaos. The Knicks were aging, the Pacers were grinding, and Miami still had that Pat Riley grit. But nobody looked like a true finals team. That's where the West came in. Portland with Rasheed Wallace, Scottie Pippen, and one of the deepest rosters in the league was legit. The Spurs, who were defending champs, were still a problem, but the Lakers, they were inevitable. Until they weren't, because in the Western Conference Finals, the Lakers fell behind 15 points in Game 7 to Portland with just over 10 minutes left. The dynasty almost dead before it began, and then the run. Kobe started slicing, Shaq started dunking, the defense tightened up, and then the iconic alley-oop. Kobe lobs it, Shaq catches it, screams. Staples Center loses its mind. Game over. Dynasty unlocked. That moment, that was the beginning. In the finals, the Pacers gave him a fight. Reggie Miller was still hitting daggers. Jalen Rose was cooking, and Indiana stretched it to 6. But Shaq, he wasn't letting this one go. He averaged 38 points, 17 rebounds, 3 blocks. Yes, you heard that right. He won Finals MVP and made it look easy. The Lakers were champions for the first time since Magic. The Shaq-Kobe duo had arrived, and the NBA was on notice. Elsewhere, we had stories brewing. Vince Carter was becoming the most electrifying player in the league, putting Toronto on the map and dropping the greatest dunk contest performance ever in Oakland that February. Allen Iverson was putting up 28 a night and carrying the Sixers on sheer willpower. Tim Duncan was still Tim Duncan, quiet, clinical, dominant. And a young phenom named Tracy McGrady had just signed with Orlando, ready to break out of Vince's shadow. But none of that mattered in the moment, because 2000 belonged to Shaquille O'Neal, and the Lakers were just getting started. If 2000 was the rise of the Lakers, 2001 was the rise of the Resistance, because this time, someone was ready to fight back. His name was Allen Iverson. Listed at 6 feet, but probably closer to 5'10", 160 pounds soaking wet, and the absolute toughest player in the league. He led the Sixers like a man possessed, averaged 31 points a game, took more hits than anyone and kept getting up, won league MVP, and made it clear he wasn't just here to score, he was here to take over. But Iverson didn't do it alone. Philly was built for war. They had the Defensive Player of the Year in Dikembe Mutombo. They had Eric Snow locking up guards. They had Aaron McKie off the bench winning 6th Man of the Year. And they had Larry Brown on the sideline, the perfectionist coach who hated everything about Iverson's style except the results. They clawed their way through the East, beat the Pacers in 4, got into a fistfight series with Vince Carter and the Raptors, and survived a Game 7 where Vince barely missed a game-winning jumper. Then battled through Milwaukee and Ray Allen in another 7-game slugfest. By the time they reached the finals, Iverson was banged up, exhausted, and still fearless. But standing on the other side, a fully weaponized Lakers team. Shaq, Kobe, Phil, and now, chemistry. They weren't just good, they were unstoppable. They swept through the West without losing a single game. They blew through Portland, wrecked the Kings, humiliated the Spurs. The average margin of victory, over 12 points per game. Shaq was still dominant, but Kobe was different now. He torched Sacramento for 48 and 16, took over in San Antonio with back-to-back 40-point games. He was only 22, but he looked like the guy. And yet, somehow, Game 1 of the finals belonged to Iverson. Nobody gave Philly a shot. Vegas had them as massive underdogs. The Lakers hadn't lost in 2 months, and Iverson walked into Staples Center and stunned them. He dropped 48, hit everything, and then came the moment. The baseline fadeaway over Tyronn Lue. Lue hits the deck. Iverson steps over him. Iconic. Sixers win Game 1. The Lakers were human again, but only for a minute. Shaq woke up. Kobe went into killer mode, and the Lakers won the next 4 straight. Closed it out in 5. Shaq averaged 33 and 15, another Finals MVP. Back-to-back champs, no drama, no doubt, but nobody forgot Iverson. The Sixers didn't win the title, but he gave the Lakers the only loss they took that postseason, and he earned everyone's respect. But what about everyone else? The Kings were building something scary with Webber, Bibby, and Peja. The Spurs still had Tim Duncan. Dirk and Nash were starting to cook in Dallas, and a 19-year-old kid named Pau Gasol just got drafted to Memphis. The league was changing, but in 2001, it was Lakers on top, and Iverson standing alone, daring them to take it from him. The 2002 NBA season was a setup. Everything felt different. Jordan wasn't walking through that tunnel anymore. He was with the Wizards now. The Bulls were still a disaster. The East was pretty forgettable. And out West, 2 teams were destined to clash. The defending champion Lakers were going for a three-peat. Shaq was still Shaq, dominant in the paint, fearless and unguardable. Kobe had leveled up. The hesitation was gone. The killer instinct was fully online. And even though the regular season was a little bumpier than usual, everyone knew what time it was. But this time, they weren't alone at the top, because the Sacramento Kings had arrived. They weren't just good, they were fun. Chris Webber was in full control, a point forward before that was a thing. Mike Bibby was ice. Peja Stojakovic was automatic from deep. Vlade Divac was flopping his way to defensive stops. And Rick Adelman had the ball flying around like it was Spurs basketball 3 years too early. They won 61 games, had the best record in the league, and most importantly, they owned the Lakers in the regular season. This wasn't just hype, this was a real threat. Meanwhile, out east, the Nets, yes, the New Jersey Nets, came out of nowhere. Jason Kidd was traded for Stephon Marbury the summer before and instantly turned the team around. He pushed the pace, controlled every possession, and brought him all the way to 52 wins. Kerry Kittles, Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson. A solid squad, but nobody believed they could win it all. because everyone was watching the West. The Kings made it to the Western Conference Finals, so did the Lakers. And what followed? One of the most controversial, chaotic, and gut-wrenching series in NBA history. It was 7 games of pure war. Game 1, Kings win. Game 2, Lakers bounce back. Game 3, Kings go up 2-1. Game 4, the Horry game. Down 2, the Lakers scramble in the final seconds. Shaq misses, Kobe misses, Vlade tips it out, and Robert Horry, big shot Bob, drains the game winner at the buzzer. 2-2. Game 5, Sacramento responds. Mike Bibby hits the dagger. 3-2 Kings, 1 game away. Then, Game 6, the game no Kings fan ever forgot. 51 free throws for the Lakers. Phantom calls, no calls, suspect whistles. It didn't even feel subtle. Tim Donaghy, years later, would point to this game as an example of manipulated outcomes. The Lakers win. Game 7 goes back to Sacramento. And even then, the Kings almost did it. But Peja misses wide open shots. Doug Christie fouls out. Bibby and Weber keep fighting, but fall short in OT. Lakers survive, go to the finals, sweep the Nets. Shaq wins his 3rd straight finals MVP. Three-peat complete. But everybody knew the real finals happened in the round before. Sacramento didn't just lose, they got robbed. 2002 was peak drama. The Shaq-Kobe three-peat, the rise and heartbreak of the Kings. And deep down, the league started to feel it. Something wasn't quite right. 2003 was a transition in real time. The Lakers starting to wobble. The Kings still reeling. The East still searching for an identity. But behind the curtain, a new generation was stepping through the door. Let's start at the top. The San Antonio Spurs were back. Tim Duncan, robotic, emotionless, unguardable, was at the peak of his powers. He didn't talk, he didn't flex, he just destroyed. He averaged 23 and 12, carried the Spurs to 60 wins, and won his 2nd straight MVP. But the secret weapon? A 2nd-round pick from Argentina named Manu Ginobili, who played like the rules didn't apply to him. Reckless finishes, offhand passes, chaos energy. Nobody in the league knew what to do with him. And on the other side, the Lakers were unraveling. Shaq was still dominant. Kobe was in full alpha mode, dropping 30 a game and taking more shots than ever, but they weren't on the same page anymore. The locker room was tense, and worse, the rest of the league had caught up. The Kings were still elite. The Mavericks, led by Dirk and Steve Nash, were putting up video game numbers. Kevin Garnett was still stuck in Minnesota doing everything by himself. And the Timberwolves were somehow still getting bounced in round 1. But the playoffs were brutal. The Lakers got bounced in the 2nd by San Antonio. The three-peat was over. Shaq was pissed. Kobe was louder. Phil looked tired. The dynasty didn't collapse, but it was leaking badly. And the Spurs, they just kept rolling. They beat the Suns, outlasted the Lakers, took down the Mavericks in 6. And on the other side, in the East, it was weird. The Pistons had built something nasty, a team of grown men. No stars, just defense. Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Big Ben Wallace. They won 50 games and locked everyone down. New Jersey made it back to the finals, led again by Jason Kidd. They swept Boston, beat the Pistons, but by the time they reached the finals, the Spurs were waiting. In that series, it was not pretty. It was physical, low scoring, a lot of missed shots, a lot of pushing and grabbing, but Duncan just kept going. He averaged 24, 17, and 5 with 5 blocks per game. In Game 6, he came 1 assist shy of a quadruple-double. He won Finals MVP again after winning it in '99. The Spurs were champs, and they did it their way. But the craziest part about 2003 was that it wasn't even about the playoffs. It was the draft. Because in June, the NBA welcomed a rookie class that would redefine the next decade. LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, 4 All-Stars, 4 future Hall of Famers, all in the same class. And just like that, the 2000s got a jolt of new blood. The Spurs were on top. The Lakers were cracking, but the next wave was already warming up on the sideline. If 2003 was a changing of the guard, 2004 was a straight-up uprising. This was the year the league learned chemistry matters, defense travels, and no amount of talent can fix a broken locker room. Let's start in LA. The Lakers weren't just loaded, they were absurd. They added Karl Malone and Gary Payton to a core that already had Shaq and Kobe, 4 Hall of Famers, 10 finals appearances, endless expectations. This was supposed to be unbeatable. Shaq was still bullying the paint. Kobe was dropping 24 a night while also battling serious off-court issues. Malone and Payton were chasing rings, sacrificing shots, trying to blend in, and Phil Jackson just trying to keep it all from exploding. But from day one, it never felt right. They still won 56 games, they still made the finals, but behind the scenes, egos were boiling. Meanwhile, out east, something different was happening. Detroit. No superstar, no ego, no hype. Just 5 guys who fit. Chauncey Billups, who was the floor general. Rip Hamilton, who was running marathons through screens. Tayshaun Prince, who was a two-way weapon. Ben Wallace was the heartbeat. Undersized, overpowered, unstoppable. And midway through the season, they added Rasheed Wallace, the final piece. A walking technical foul with game-changing talent. Larry Brown had them playing some of the best team defense ever. Ugly wins, grimy basketball, total buy-in. And in the playoffs, they smothered everyone. Knocked out the Bucks, survived a 7-game war with the Nets, then destroyed the Pacers, holding them to under 80 points a game. The finals? Everyone expected the Lakers to walk. Instead, the Lake Show got shut down. Detroit didn't just beat them, they embarrassed them. Game 1, Detroit wins. Game 2, Kobe hits a miracle 3 to force OT. Lakers steal it. But then, Detroit turned the lights out. Game 3, blowout. Game 4, blowout. Game 5, over. Series, 4-1 Pistons. They made the Hall of Famers look lost. Kobe and Shaq barely talked. Karl got hurt. Gary looked exposed. And the Pistons just kept defending. Finals MVP, Chauncey Billups. Cool, calm, in control. No superstars, no drama, just defense, toughness, and perfect execution. That finals wasn't just an upset, it was a philosophy statement. Team basketball still wins championships. And afterward, the Lakers blew it up. Phil Jackson walked, Shaq got traded to Miami, Kobe stayed, and the dynasty was dead. Meanwhile, around the league, LeBron was just getting warmed up, averaging 21, 6, and 6 in his rookie season. Carmelo carried Denver to the playoffs. D-Wade looked like a future star in Miami, and the Spurs were lurking again. 2004 was the season where everything flipped. The flashy team lost, the quiet team won, and the blueprint for building a champion just got rewritten. If 2004 was grit and chaos, 2005 was balanced. This was the year the league settled into something steady. The storylines weren't as loud, the headlines weren't as messy, but the basketball, it was surgical. Let's start with the champs. The Pistons came back nearly unchanged. Chauncey, Rip, Tayshaun, Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace. Still the nastiest defense in the league. Still 0 superstars. Still nobody smiling. They won 54 games and bullied their way through the East again, but the road got rockier. The Miami Heat had officially leveled up. Shaq got traded to South Beach, Pat Riley brought in Stan Van Gundy to coach, and most importantly, Dwayne Wade became a problem. He averaged 24, 6, and 5 in just his second year. Quick, explosive, impossible to stay in front of. Shaq called him Flash. The rest of the league just called him a nightmare. Miami won 59 games, and if not for a late-game collapse in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, they probably would have made the finals. But Detroit, still too tough, still too experienced. Back to the big stage. Waiting for them, the real dynasty of the 2000s, the San Antonio Spurs. Tim Duncan was still the most consistent force in the league. Manu Ginobili had officially arrived, reckless, fearless, brilliant, and Tony Parker still blazing past everyone. The Spurs won 59 games, and they didn't just beat teams in the playoffs, they outlasted them. Knocked off Denver, survived Seattle, beat Phoenix in 5, even with Steve Nash playing MVP ball. That set up the finals. Spurs versus Pistons. Two defensive monsters, two elite systems, no egos, no distractions, just pure basketball. And yeah, it wasn't flashy, it was slow, physical, mid-2000s rock fight energy. But if you love defense, rotations, and shot making under pressure, this was heaven. It went 7 games, back and forth, chess match after chess match. Game 5 was a classic. Robert Horry, 34 years old, turned back the clock and dropped 21 points in the second half and overtime. Hit the game-winning 3 from the left wing. Big Shot Bob lived up to the name again. Game 7, close, tight, gritty, but San Antonio had more shot makers, more composure, more Duncan. He dropped 25 and 11. Manu added 23, and the Spurs won their 3rd title in 7 years. Duncan, Finals MVP again. 3 rings, 2 MVPs. No noise, just greatness. Elsewhere, LeBron took another leap, averaged 27, 7, and 7, and carried Cleveland to 42 wins. Dirk was still killing in Dallas. Nash won MVP in Phoenix and turned the Suns into a 62-win track team. And the league started to feel like it was speeding up again. But 2005, that belonged to the Spurs. They didn't talk, they didn't sell jerseys, they just won. 2006 was unpredictable from the start. The Spurs were still elite. The Pistons won 64 games. The Suns were running defenses into exhaustion. And the Lakers? Still trying to figure out post-Shaq life with Kobe going full lone wolf mode. But none of that was the headline, because this was the year of D. Wade. Let's set the stage. The Miami Heat came into the season reloaded. Shaq was still dominant. Not Orlando or LA Shaq, but still a force. Pat Riley kicked Stan Van Gundy upstairs and took over coaching duties mid-season. They added veteran weapons, Gary Payton, Antoine Walker, James Posey, and they had a 24-year-old Dwayne Wade entering full-blown superstardom. He was silky, explosive, and showed no fear. They cruised through the East, knocked out the Bulls, overwhelmed the Nets, took out the Pistons in 6, ending Detroit's reign. On the other side, Dallas. The Mavericks were done being a punchline. Dirk Nowitzki had leveled up. He'd taken all the soft criticism and buried it under 27 points and 10 boards a game. Jason Terry was locked in. Josh Howard was ascending. Devin Harris brought speed. And Avery Johnson, former player now coach, had this team dialed in. They stormed through the playoffs, beat Memphis, took down the Spurs in a legendary 7-game series. Dirk dropped 37 in Game 7, then steamrolled Steve Nash and the Suns in the conference finals. Dallas looked unbeatable. And in the first 2 games of the finals, they were. Dallas went up 2-0. Game 3, they led by 13 in the 4th. And then Wade happened. Game 3, Wade drops 42. Miami comes back. Series saved. Game 4, Wade drops 36. Ties the series. Game 5, Wade drops 43 and hits the game-winning free throws in OT. Game 6, Wade drops 36 again, and Miami completes the comeback. Finals MVP, Wade, averaged 34.7 points on 47% shooting, scored 121 points in the final 3 games. It was one of the greatest finals performances ever, but not everyone loved it. The free throws were non-stop, 97 attempts in 6 games. Dallas fans screamed foul, literally and figuratively. Mark Cuban accused the league of rigging things. Refs were booed. Avery Johnson benched Devin Harris for no good reason, and Dirk watched it all slip away. It wasn't just a loss, it was a collapse. The Mavericks were this close to a ring and then fell apart. And that label, soft, chokers, not built for it, would follow Dirk for years. Meanwhile, Wade, he went from star to superstar overnight. Shaq got his 4th ring, Pat Riley got his 7th as a head coach, and the Heat became the first team since 1977 to win the title without home court in any round. 2006 was chaotic. There was drama, redemption, and controversy. Everything the NBA could be, all in one postseason. 2007 was the year the NBA officially passed the torch. Not fully, not yet, but the signs were everywhere. Shaq was fading, Kobe was spectacular but frustrated, D-Wade was banged up, and the Suns, with Steve Nash still putting up MVP numbers, couldn't catch a break. But through all the noise, one name started to echo louder than the rest: LeBron James. In just his 4th season, he dragged a shaky Cavaliers team, no second star, no elite coach, no depth, all the way to the NBA Finals. But let's rewind. The season started with familiar players at the top. The Mavericks won 67 games. Dirk Nowitzki won MVP. The Spurs quietly won 58. Phoenix looked like a legit contender again. And out east, Detroit was still a force, and Miami was still defending champs, at least on paper. Meanwhile, in the East, LeBron was ascending. He beat Gilbert Arenas and the Wizards again, got past the Nets, then ran into the Pistons in the conference finals, and that's when it happened. Game 5, double OT, in Detroit. LeBron by himself scored the Cavs' final 25 points and won the game on a drive past 4 defenders. It was one of the greatest playoff performances in NBA history. The Pistons were stunned. Cleveland would close it out in 6, and just like that, the 22-year-old kid from Akron had made the NBA Finals. But then, he ran into the buzzsaw, the Spurs. Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, Popovich. All healthy, all peaking. No drama, no distractions, just execution. They were simply too good. LeBron couldn't get clean looks. Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Larry Hughes, Drew Gooden, they just weren't ready. The Cavs averaged 80 points per game in the series. Tony Parker ran circles around everyone, averaged 24 a game and won Finals MVP. The Spurs swept Cleveland in 4, their 4th title in 9 years. Quiet, ruthless, dominant. And for LeBron, it was a crash course in what greatness really required. He wasn't ready yet, but he would be. 2007 was the year a king touched the throne, but also the year the Spurs reminded everyone this was still their league. 2008 couldn't have been scripted any better. After years of rebuilding, mediocrity, and early playoff exits, the Boston Celtics finally said enough. Danny Ainge went all in. Trey brought in Rajon Rondo. Raw, unpredictable, brilliant. Kendrick Perkins, a walking scowl and brick wall. James Posey, Eddie House, role guys who knew their job. Doc Rivers called it Ubuntu, the idea of unity in sacrifice. It happened because of one phone call, Pau Gasol. In February, LA fleeced Memphis in a trade for the skilled Spanish big man. Suddenly, Kobe had help, a real second option, and the Lakers took off. They finished 57-25. Kobe finally won a regular season MVP. Finally, and he earned it. 28-6-5. Relentless defense, leadership, edge. They steamrolled Denver, beat Utah in 6, then crushed the Spurs in 5 in the WCF. It was Kobe versus Duncan, round 4, but this time Kobe won. And Kobe wanted revenge for 2004. KG wanted his first ring. Pierce wanted respect. Ray wanted redemption. Paul Pierce comes back from a knee injury like he's Willis Reed. Game 2, Boston again, 2-0. But momentum feels shaky heading back to the Garden. But heading back to Boston for Game 6, it was an all-out massacre. Boston wins by 39. Confetti, celebration. We weren't done yet. 2009 was the year the league was shifting. The Celtics were defending champs, the Cavs were rolling, the Magic were climbing, and the Lakers, they were focused. Kobe had heard it all. He couldn't win without Shaq. He was too selfish. He wasn't a real leader. 2009 was the year he silenced everything. The Lakers finished 65-17, second best record in the league. Pau Gasol, fully integrated. Lamar Odom, playing his best ball. Andrew Bynum, getting healthy. Phil Jackson, in full Zen master mode. But the biggest thing, Kobe was in control. Not angry, not forcing, just locked in. 27 points a night, surgical in the clutch. All business. Out east, it was supposed to be the year of LeBron. The Cavs won 66 games. LeBron was unreal. 28-7-7 with elite defense. He won MVP, deserved it. The supporting cast, not elite, but they fit. Mo Williams, Delonte West, Big Z. Everyone wanted one thing, LeBron versus Kobe. Nike was ready. Puppets commercials were airing before the playoffs even started, but then Dwight Howard crashed the party. Orlando went 59-23. They were weird, new school, and hard to guard. A legit 4-out, 1-in system. Dwight dominated the paint. Rashard Lewis and Hedo Turkoglu stretched the floor. Jameer Nelson had a breakout year before a shoulder injury. But even with Rafer Alston running the point in the playoffs, they knocked out the Sixers, beat the defending champion Celtics in 7, and then took down the MVP. LeBron dropped 38, 8, and 8 for the series. Game 2, a buzzer-beating 3 to tie the series 1-1. But Orlando was too deep, too hot from 3. They won in 6. No LeBron versus Kobe. And honestly, Kobe didn't care. The Lakers took care of business, swept the Jazz, beat the Rockets in a gritty 7-game series. Even without Yao Ming, Houston pushed them to the brink, then dismantled the Nuggets in 6. Melo versus Kobe was electric, but Kobe was better. And in the finals, Kobe versus Dwight. Meanwhile, LeBron was still waiting for his moment. The Celtics were aging, the Spurs were regrouping, and the league heading into the next decade was still chasing Kobe. The 2000s were gritty, they were dramatic, they were personal. This was the decade where the NBA evolved right in front of us. It started with Shaq and Kobe owning the league together, and ended with Kobe standing alone, 4 rings deep, proving he never needed anyone but himself. We saw dynasties rise in San Antonio, a blue-collar revolution in Detroit, the King arrive in Cleveland, and Dwayne Wade put an entire finals on his back. We saw super teams form, superstars collapse, and rivalries reborn. But more than anything, the 2000s meant something. These weren't highlight reel seasons. They were battles. Legacies were built. Narratives were shattered. And through it all, the game just kept getting better. Because this isn't just basketball history. This is the era that raised a generation. And yeah, history is written by the winners. But let's not forget the ones who made it matter. Guys like Gilbert Arenas, who dropped 60 on Kobe. Baron Davis, who dunked on an entire state. Steve Francis, who made Houston electric. Zach Randolph, who never backed down from a fight. And Jamal Crawford, whose crossover should be in the Hall of Fame by itself. They didn't always win, but they always showed up. And in the 2000s, that was enough to make you unforgettable. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Like the video, sub to the channel, and drop your favorite 2000s moment in the comments. And if you liked this video, you certainly have to watch our 2010s decade recap. It'll be the perfect transition after watching this 2000s decade recap. We'll link it right here for you. This is Hoop Dungeon, and we thank you again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.